Hello and welcome to another episode of Interlink by CNES at OP Jindal Global University. Little bit about CNES before we start is that we're a podcast that tries to break down intellectual barriers in order to approach certain key issues that we try to look at with different perspectives from both policy perspectives and research perspectives. And what we try to do is try to have deep conversations on these evolving matters of society, polity, and economy. And so for today's episode, what we'll be doing is we'll sort of be looking beyond the curtains and getting a behind the scene sort of view on the development in India. And by this, I don't mean the development of sky-rise buildings or wide roads in the metropolitan cities of India. I mean the people at the grassroots. These are the people for whom it's hard to access what is for everyday convenience for us, such as sanitation or education. And what we'll be looking at is who helps the development of these people and where where is it that their help comes from. And for this episode, we have a very distinguished personality with us, Mr. Sanjay Jain, who is the co-founder of the Yatra Foundation. The Yatra Foundation is an organization based in Australia, which has been funding for almost 2 decades many children in India for their education. And the Yatra Foundation is currently funding 3 schools in India that are across the country. And so they've helped thousands of children gain access to education that they might not have otherwise had. And so having a conversation with him will really help us understand the power of helping and giving to others and the things that can be achieved by taking certain steps. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sanjay.
You're welcome.
So, so getting right into it, I think my first question for you is I'll start off with like a personal question. Is that how did you find yourself in this field of work? And like the idea of helping others or the feeling of helping others, would you prescribe it to a certain incident in your life?
I lived most of my life in Australia. I was 11 years old when we first came to Australia, and we used to go home to India. We used to call India home, and we used to go home to India and for our holidays. And we would see children who would not have the opportunity to go to school, and we wondered what we would do. And we did this for many years without actually doing anything. We would come back and start our lives and get busy with our own lives, with our own children. But one day, the co-founders of Yatra decided that we should do something, even if it's small. We should start and doing something. So we started to start a slum school in my hometown of Kota, and it was a very humble beginnings, let's say. But we decided that we should do something, and I had a relative in India who was in education. She was running a private school, and she helped us to establish that school.
And so this thing, now that we all have a definition of philanthropy in our minds, we know what it means by dictionary, but you've been working in it for 20, like almost 20 years. So has it come to mean certain things to you? How would you define it now?
So philanthropy for me, as a definition, is a love of humanity by deploying time or money to address some fundamental cause of social issues. That's how I would define philanthropy.
And did you have this definition when you started, or is that something you've learned over the years?
No, it's been learned by experience. It's been learned by meeting other philanthropists, other
Mm.
people doing other things in Australia or overseas. But I also undertook a master's in philanthropy and social
Oh,
investment
yeah.
after a few years of starting Yatra Foundation, so that we could better understand what we were doing and minimize our wastage, so that we can have the greatest impact.
And was studying philanthropy very different from what it is like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think the course that I did, the master's that I did, gave me access to a lot of information. So
Mm.
not just the practical information that I was getting on in the field, but also access to work that other people had already done in the past, so that we could design and better understand how to structure our giving.
Mm. My third question was, you mentioned that you used to come to India and you thought of helping others, but why is it that you choose the field of education? There are other areas as well, as such as sanitation or some health. So
Sure, we wanted to do something or help others so they could help themselves in the future. And education is one of the most efficient ways to lift the poor out of poverty, and one of the most sustainable ways of doing that. We try and help out our partners to deliver quality education. In fact, Yatra's motto is opportunity through education. So we wanted to make a generational change, not only for the school children that we were educating, but also for the immediate generation, their parents. And education is, in my view, the best and long-lasting impact.
And have you seen these impacts? Like, or do you have stories about them?
Sure. I mean, the other thing with education is that it's a long-term investment
Mm.
in the students, and to watch the impact come through takes a long time. So
Yeah.
we started we started preschool, and in some of our schools the children are now graduating, and we're hearing lots of stories. I mean, my best story is that of a child in an Isha school in the south, who was the best in her class. And when we asked her, what would you like to be she was in year 12, that after you finish year 12, what would you like to be? And she said that she wanted to be a singer. So, commonly you would get children saying that they want to be a teacher, or they want to be a doctor, or they want to be an engineer. But the very fact that she was able to choose a career, that we were
Mm.
able to facilitate a career that she wanted to follow, that's been very rewarding.
Yeah. That's a really nice story. Also, so when Yatra has, of course, funded so many children and helped them have education, but was there another further goal in mind when you were thinking of education? Was this a means to achieve another goal?
I mean, ultimately, our goal is to help reduce poverty and suffering. That's our goal, and we think that um, giving education helps that person to make the right choices in their life and have
Mm.
better opportunities to lift themselves out of poverty.
Mm. And so your home was in India. You'd been coming, as you mentioned, since you were 11 years old. Kota was your home. So, of course, you felt a certain emotion towards it. But how is it that you found funders in Australia, and how do they look at this funding? What motivates them to fund to a country so far away?
That's a question that I get asked even from the children in India. They
Oh.
say, why the children that are in the schools that we help ask, why are these people that don't know us are wanting to help and give money to support us. To be frank, when we first started, we leaned on our friends and our family to raise the
Mm.
funds. They gave as much to us as they gave to the children in India.
Mm.
But as we have been able to validate the impact that we are having, others have donated. Quite often nowadays, if we have a website, donors will search for keywords like education,
Mm.
children, India, and Yatra Foundation would appear on very high on the pages, and uh, they will donate on that basis. Having now been able to see what we've done it's easier now, actually, to tell you
Yeah.
the truth, to raise funds um, uh, for children that they will never meet.
Yeah. And do you have any certain anecdotes regarding when you first started off and you were trying to generate funders in Australia?
We tried to use the Indian connection. We held Bollywood parties, so
Oh,
our fundraisers, and people like dressing up and coming to these parties, and we had, dance teachers teach people to do some Bollywood dancing, um, and that just it was more for us to raise awareness um, through both the Indian community here, but also the Australian community. And as the Indian community in Australia is becoming more affluent, and the next generation that is now born in Australia of Indian origin, they're looking for a way to connect back to India, and our functions are helping them to do that, to find a way to. We're acting as a conduit actually for people who want to give back to the country that they have some connection to.
so a lot of the funders are the Indian diaspora in Australia.
It's changing. It didn't used to be.
Mm.
Previously, most of our funders were Australians,
Mm.
but now slowly it is changing. As I mentioned, the Indian diaspora is becoming more affluent, um, and there is a culture of giving in Australia. So even from very early in the schools,
Yeah.
philanthropy or giving is taught at a very early age. Cause-based
Yeah.
um, giving is very strong.
Mm.
So children are being brought up. The ones that have come through the system
Yeah.
of being educated here um, have been brought up on the culture of giving.
So you mentioned these parties that you used to hold. Something similar that you do in India is these cycle tours. So could you elaborate on that? Like why the cycle tours?
Well, the cycle tour was a bit of an adventure, right? And I think you
Yeah.
came on one of those
Yeah.
cycle tours, Nandini as well. Um, it, it it was a way for us to help our supporters to see rural India and the complexities of delivering education in remote locations. Um, and we, even for us, we've held about 5 of these cycle tours to see India on a cycle. It's like seeing India in slow motion, because when you go to India, everything is so frenzied, everything is so rushed. But when you're on a cycle, it's very, very different. So even for us, it was an education of what real rural India was. Um, but also, it was a way for people to. We actually used it, so we would invite our supporters to come. Um, we would get upwards of about 12 to 18 uh, people from Australia coming. But it was also a way for us to fundraise. They would then raise, the peer-to-peer um, raising. They would send videos back on their social media. It helped to raise awareness about Yatra Foundation, but also about the cause. So it was a different way of approaching fundraising.
And how did this idea come about? Who brainstormed the idea?
I'm not a cyclist, right? So you would have
Yeah.
noticed, Nandini, that I was at the back of the pack when
Huh.
with your father when we were
Mm.
cycling. Um, actually, cycling for fundraising is quite common in Australia.
Mm.
So people hold multiple events, and they will have a charity that they will support, um, and and use cycling as an event. But we thought we had to find a connection back to India, and so organizing these tours um, back to India, and we would always end up at a school. The last stop was the school
Mm.
that we were
Yeah.
supporting, and that resonated well with the supporters that came, the other cyclists.
Yeah. And do you have any anecdotes or nice experiences or heartful anything that you'd like to share about those journeys?
Oh, I think cycling in India is seen as being very dangerous. Um,
Mm.
is being seen as being uh, in the rural India, and mainly the people that were coming were Australians. To see those people in rural India was interesting. I mentioned my lack of cycling skills. I remember once when we were cycling from Savai Madhopur back to Jaipur, and I was pretty much cycling on my own because everyone else had gone past. And as they would, children would run out onto the road as we would be approaching, and as I approached a particular village, there were children sort of hanging around, and as I approached them, they said to me, "Sir, थोड़ा ज़्यादा pedal लगाओ, बहुत पीछे रह गए आप." So, but they were always welcoming. The villagers were always welcoming, and quite often if we stopped, they would invite us for tea or for something to eat in their homes. So, yeah, it was a heartwarming. Although as hard as it is, because we would cycle somewhere between 50 and 80 kilometers a day, and as difficult as it was, there's nothing better than seeing a child or a mother, smiling and welcoming us into their homes.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to deviate a little bit from my line of questions here just to ask you what would be the reaction of the children when so many Australians just came on the cycles and you said you would always end at a school. So what would be the reaction of the children in that school?
I mean, I think for them it was a big event.
Yeah.
It was a celebration. They had lots of questions all the time. We would, of course, um, try and inform them about Australia, where it was. One of the things that we introduced in quite a few of the schools is sport. And India and Australia with cricket has always had a sporting relationship as well. But we would introduce the Australian sports as well, and sport is such a common denominator between people. And one of the reasons why we introduced sports in our schools was that it also breaks down barriers. So on a sports field, everyone is equal. You have a position that you're playing, and it doesn't matter where you're from or what your background is. You have a job to do on the sports field, whether you're a cricketer or a soccer player. And it's a great way to break down those barriers. So we use sport. So we always played a game against the children, which they enjoyed very much. Usually we were much older than them and much beyond our prime, and they beat us most of the time. So they got a lot of enjoyment out of doing that as well.
Yeah, I think more recently I've been seeing how sports can act as a facilitator of communication. I've met many people who use sports to help children communicate. So was this also a way that you could break the language barriers between all the Australians and the children? What would that interaction look like?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Australians, most of the people that we're with didn't speak the local language, didn't speak
Yeah.
Hindi. And so sport is a good way of communicating. It's also a good way of teaching other things. Even in Australia, sports is used in schools, not just from a physical health point of view, which obviously is of a benefit, but also from learning other skills like teamwork, and how to manage a group of people. So sports is not just about the physical activity. It has a lot of benefits.
Yes. Just going back now to the questions, and so how did the journey of Yatra begin? Like, if you go back to the very start, what was that like?
But as I mentioned, we started with a Islam school in
Mm,
Kota, and on our first day, as so only 6 children showed up.
yeah,
But we, over the years, when we finally finished with that slum school, about 80 children were coming to our school. And it was only up till year 4, or grade 4, class 4 in India. And these were children that were otherwise not going to any school. They were just hanging around in the slums or looking after their other siblings. So that's how we started. But in the same time, running a school from India, from Australia in India, is very difficult. It has its own challenges. And we pivoted then to look for other NGOs that were already doing great work in the field. So we started then partnering with 3 NGOs, namely GSK in Savai Madhopur, Seva Mandir in Udaipur, and Isha Vidya in Tamil Nadu, who were already delivering some programs. And our focus has been on delivery of quality education. So we don't necessarily donate to build schools. We don't do infrastructure, but we will pay for teachers' salary, teacher training, teachers' learning materials, computers, library. They're the things that we like to support within the school. All the other things are important, but they need to either come from the community or from other
Yeah.
donors.
Right. And so, as you mentioned, that it's a difficult task to fund across the like away in another continent. So, how were you able to convince others that this was a fund worth raising? How were you able to get your initial donors?
So we, the initial donations weren't that huge, and we supported with our own funds to get Yatra started. We also didn't have tax deductibility in Australia at that time, which we do now. But initially we didn't have that, so we couldn't attract any corporate or companies or large foundations. So all the donations were being made by individuals who necessarily didn't want a tax deduction. They just wanted to help in some way. So, yeah, it was difficult fundraising. We were spending a lot of time fundraising, which is not what we wanted to do. We thought the cause was so simple that people would support us. But it's difficult when the cause is so far away. And it's and also that it's not an immediate impact that you can show. It's not like buying a water pump or a computer to some extent. Education is a long process, and its impact cannot be felt straight away. You cannot claim to have made great impact, at least within the first 10 years of operating continuously with the community and the school.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, it was already hard to convince others, but I think the first step in order to convince others is to convince yourself. So, how were you able to convince yourself that such a large to raise such a foundation was possible, to get donors was possible?
We never doubted that we wouldn't be able to raise the funds that we need. I mean, every year it is the same scenario for us, is that we need to raise money. We have a commitment to our children that we're supporting. And as I mentioned to you at the start, that for years we had been doing nothing. And so what we really needed to do was just start. And that's what I say to others who want to give, is don't think the task is so big that you stop yourself from starting. Just start. Even if it's small amount, just start. And then you'll see that the benefit of giving is not just for the person receiving, but also for yourself.
And so I'll just go back now that the last bit of the interview to personal questions again. So you said, yeah, when you started, you were just thinking of just starting. But having once started, at any point, did you waver, or did you take steps back thinking this was not a possible journey?
There are always hurdles, right? That's life, and that's no different for Yatra Foundation. But we always focused our thoughts on the children that we're supporting. And we are only now just starting to see the alumni of those children and the impact that education has on their lives. And that keeps us going. You're right, we've been now it's nearly 17 years of the formation of Yatra and supporting it every year. You know the impact of COVID. That was a very tough period where schools were closed, but we worked with the NGOs that we were supporting to still deliver some form of education through either smartphones or the teachers were running small classes within the villages themselves. So I think if we just focus on the children, then that motivates us to keep going. But we also have an exit strategy. We also have an exit plan. We don't want to be supporting the NGOs forever. We want that either the community or the government sees the work that is being done and either takes over the schools or improves the quality within the government schools, so that the children can have access. The landscape has changed from when we first operated, where there were no schools, or the schools were so far away the children couldn't go. Now there are government schools nearby in most places. So our hope and our wish is that over a period of time, there will not be a need for Yatra Foundation.
Oh, so do you have any connections with the government that helps you facilitate these communications?
So we rely on the community. Of course, to operate the schools, you need to have government approvals, but we rely on the community to talk to the government. But also, some of the programs involve training of government teachers in a structured way. That has had mixed reaction. So we're exploring all avenues where we can see whether the quality of education being provided in government schools continues to improve. It's improving, but it needs to continue to improve. And hopefully our children will be able to go to those schools. But also, education is not just about numeracy and literacy. In fact, about 3 or 4 years ago, we started our monitoring and evaluation program, focusing largely on numeracy and literacy, which was a way to validate what we were doing, but also a way for us to test whether there was a need for us. Because if we weren't, with our partners, providing quality education, then we might as well let those children, might as well facilitate the children to go to government schools rather than support these NGOs to provide quality education.
And you said that so you want to reach a point where Yatra Foundation wouldn't be needed. So is that with relation to a particular NGO and you'd move on to another set of schools? Or
Yeah, I think if our work is done in that particular area, we will try and see whether there is other areas that we can have an impact in. And India is a large country, right?
Yeah.
But we would like to keep our, I'm from, my wife and I, Renu, are from Rajasthan, and Ravi is from Tamil Nadu. So we would like to try and keep our roots. It gives us also a reason to keep coming back to India.
Yes. I think if you have any other anecdotes you'd like to share or any experiences, then we can talk about that now, or else I'll move to my last question.
No, I think I've covered quite a lot, don't you think?
Yeah. So my last question is that what's that little something that's kept you going for so long and has kept you committed to this whole journey?
All the 4 founders have always wanted to give or support education in some form. And we have been doing it, but in an unorganized way. We would support either someone that we knew in India, whether it was a house help, whose children we put through schools. But in the end, we keep coming back to what is our overall aim, and it is to offer opportunity through education. And if we can continue to do that, that keeps us motivated to keep doing that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's become part of our fabric, our family's fabric. So I think, and it's rewarding. It's also rewarding for if you can assist another human being to get off the ground, then it is rewarding for the person giving. There's a very famous saying that the perfume of the rose lingers long on the hand that gives, and not just on the person that receives the rose. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we'll draw to a close now. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. It was really gratifying and just incredible to hear about the amount, like from how you started as just a, as you took your steps just like most of us. We waver, we think about it, and we take time. But your small step has turned into something so big and has helped so many people. So it was really, really incredible to hear about that. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank
You're
you.
welcome, Nandini.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.